Homeless families need affordable housing, but they also need supports, including connections to family members and jobs. To tell us about some new supportive housing in Dorchester's Four Corners neighborhood is our guest from FamilyAid Boston. We'd like to welcome the Associate Director of Communications and Development, Shannon. Cain. Arnold, thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you, Chris.
Just start with about what would happen to these families if they didn't have a place like this where they could live.
It's become increasingly challenging for our families in the past few years to find housing. These are families generally who are moving out of shelter, so they spent a period of time in shelter, anywhere from a few months to a year or a little more. And what we're finding is many of these families have stabilized, they have gotten jobs, they've gotten promotions, they've increased their income, but because of the cost of housing in Boston, they're not able to find affordable housing, and they might be on waiting lists for vouchers or for public housing. So a lot of them would be stuck in limbo and forced to stay in shelter for longer. Part of our goal in expanding this affordable housing program, it's not the kind of big affordable housing developments that you might generally think of, which are good and which are necessary, but we are sort of one by one buying up these multifamily buildings to convert into affordable housing using private funds so that we can move families out of our shelter units and into this affordable housing to pay the rent that they can afford and also receive the case management services they need to ensure that they'll remain stable over the long term.
And in this case, this is one of those brick multi-unit buildings along Washington Street, I guess, that you're...
It is, yeah. It's a little side street in the Four Corners neighborhood near Franklin Park.
Right. What about what would happen if these families had to look for housing on their own? Because maybe 20 years ago they could have found a 3-decker unit near Four Corners. That would have been fine. But nowadays maybe they'd have to move to Brockton or Lawrence or something like that.
Yeah, we're finding that a lot more with the families that we work with. These are families who are low income, as I said, who can't afford market rate rent, and even when they can, the competition for housing is so stiff in Boston. So we have housing specialists that work with our families in shelter, and they're finding that their clients are going to open houses for apartments in Dorchester, and there'll be 25 families. One of the things that our families encounter is that if they're known to be homeless, if they're known to be living in shelter, that puts them at a disadvantage as well. So you're right, it is much tighter competition, much more difficult to find housing. We are working with some families who can move outside of the city, but the fact is that that's just not possible. A lot of them work in the city. They have really critical community connections to schools and jobs and family. So we're really looking to continue to build this program so there are more options for families who want and need to stay in the city.
We're talking with Shannon Cain. Arnold from FamilyAid Boston. Shannon, you recently had an open house at this building. What was that like?
It was great. We had just finished the renovations on the building the day before, basically, and we just had a small group of partners and supporters, some city officials that just came to see what the apartment looked like. It was great because we've actually we've used private partnerships both to obtain and finance the building and also to furnish it. So we worked with Court Furniture, which furnishes temporary housing generally for executives in the Boston area. They donated a bunch of gently used furniture to actually furnish the unit. So when the family moves in, they'll have furnishings as well. So it was a good opportunity for people to see what the space looked like, to really imagine what it's going to be like for a family moving in there after a number of months in shelter.
For families who are homeless, sometimes the market itself is disruptive, but sometimes they've gone through other kinds of disruptions in their lives. So what about help with that?
Well, we have, the majority of our staff are social workers and case managers who work with the families not only on their housing and income issues, but the many other issues that might be contributing to their housing instability. So we have families who might struggle with domestic violence, with substance abuse, with lack of education, families with significant health problems that don't have connections to the right resources to deal with those. So each family has a dedicated case manager that works with them individually and connects them to other community resources too as they need.
Speaking of resources, what about the funding that made this project possible?
So this was, as I said, it was entirely through private funding. We received a number of foundation grants for the purchase, as well as a generous gift from an individual donor. We had significant help from the United Way to fund the social services that families living in the units will receive. We were able to finance the properties through First Republic Bank at a very favorable rate that's actually going to allow us to purchase some additional units in 2017.
I know this might not be something you could say in exact numbers, but you're helping a few more families here. But how does that compare with the people, the waiting list, or just that demand out there?
So the program right now, it's small, but it's growing. In this affordable housing program, between this building and the buildings that we already owned, there are 10 families. We're hoping to increase that throughout the year 2017. And we have a number of other programs as well that help families get into housing. As I mentioned, we have 123 families in our state shelter program and an additional 12 in a city program. And we also operate a rapid rehousing program that it's not our own agency-owned housing, but we provide rental assistance, startup funds, housing search, and supportive services to help families get into and stay in other housing as well.
Finally, if anyone would like more information about FamilyAid Boston, you've got a website they can go to?
Yes, we do. They can go to www.familyaidboston.org.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Shannon, Cain, Arnold.